only 50 on
And
that.
this is the first time there's been any sort of major repairs, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when the brakes were done. It was just one of the ball joints. It was just one of them, I think.
Just one brake?
One ball joint. The brakes.
Oh, one ball joint, yeah. Well, it's always the one, you turn right or something. Good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hey, welcome to our November boat shop update. It's about a week till Thanksgiving, which means we're coming up on our holiday open house, which brings probably the greatest number of people into the shop every year. We've got about 2,000 people, I'd say, over the course of the weekend. Day before Thanksgiving, we will get a huge delivery of Christmas trees here, which will be available the Friday after Thanksgiving, also known as Black Friday. So we'll be here 11 to 4, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all weekend if you want to come get your trees. 10% discount for members. So come here and get your Christmas tree. And come to our holiday open house, which is the first weekend in December. If you're a member, you're invited to an opening party the night of the 6th, which I believe is Friday. Check those dates because I don't know what today even is. But the weekend following is the open house, 11 to 4 both days. We'll have all kinds of product for you to purchase. We'll have an art show. We'll have music, all kinds of entertainment and fun. So that's what's going on here. Also, many of you, I hope, are going to soon get an annual appeal letter. It is also that time of year. And so I know I get a bunch, and because of my profession, I try to read them as a professional courtesy, but I don't necessarily act on all of them, and I just encourage you to, even if you don't act on it, which we hope you do, but if you don't, just read it, because we try to put a lot of effort into it and try to say something meaningful and try to introduce you to some of our students here. So if that does show up in the mail, please open and read it. What have we been doing here? Oh, here comes the sun. So you know when the sun's at this angle, you're getting into November. Some of you, if you have the Instagram, I try to get people to tag another beautiful sunset at Lowell's Boat Shop, because this time of year, that's about all we get are beautiful sunsets, especially when it doesn't rain for weeks on end. We've been working pretty hard trying to get these boats moving along. Here we've got our Asbury skiff, and so this is a 16 footer, which is our pretty standard size for this. I did a how-to build in wooden boat several years ago, and we'll flash that across the screen if you want to get that back issue of wooden boat, but it was over 2 issues, including a study plan. We do offer plans for this here if you want to build it, but I would recommend, if you do attempt it, to also get the how-to for wooden boat, because that kind of brings you through step by step. Our building method's a little different than your traditional lofting, making patterns, that sort of thing. It's actually easier and more forgiving. But one curiosity of these, because it is a power boat, is the rocker in the bottom. And so this has about 2.5 inches of rocker forward, which means from about here to the bow, the bottom curves up, sweeps up about 2.5 inches. And then it's flat through here. And then actually from this after frame to the transom, it goes down, swoops down about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. What that does, called reverse rocker, but in a boat like this, it gives you a little more buoyancy back here to account for the weight of the engine, but it also acts sort of like a trim tab, so that when you get up on a plane, it kind of gets you up and allows you to ride up on top of the water. If you had a proper rocker, meaning if you had rocker fore and aft, the boat would just plow, wouldn't plane. So that is, you can play with that a little bit. The other thing that I've done here, we have a plywood bottom and a plywood garboard, and I've tabbed the transom into the bottom and the garboard pretty heavily here with fillets and fiberglass. That is because when they first built this boat, they expected it to have a 10, 15 horsepower on it. Now you're looking at 30, 40 horses. And so you have to really build some strength into these to account for that. The other thing that we'll do is when we put the seats in, we'll build a seat into the quarter here. And that actually adds, it's like a knee, but it actually adds a lot of stiffness and strength into this when the engine's going. So the other thing you'll notice here, I just did this maybe about an hour ago. I've got a heavy fillet along the chine. I've got this peel ply on top. If you're unfamiliar with peel ply, it is this nylon fabric. This has a red tracer in it so that it can become clear, but you don't want to leave it on there. You want to know that it's there. When you do a fillet, or in this case like a fiberglass fillet, you take this peel ply and press it on top. You can actually mold the fillet with it, which is kind of nice. But you'll see that it sort of saturates with the epoxy. But nylon being of a synthetic material, tomorrow when this is all kicked, I'll pull this peel ply right off, and it'll take away the blush, but it'll also leave a nice textured, almost paintable surface. And so it takes care of a lot of the gross goobers that you end up with when you do epoxy work. So that's this guy. I've got some pine planking that I planed up last week. I'm going to start spiling the next planks, but ahead of doing that, what I've done subtly is I've used, and again I did this a couple hours ago before the camera got here, but I laid, and this is all in that article, straight edges up along the frames at an angle up from this plank, and I've actually planed a flat onto the frame that the next plank will lay against. Once that next plank is on, I will do the same. And so what you'll end up seeing is this frame, this flat here, next plank goes about there, it'll get planed up like so, then the next plank will land here, and then it'll come right up kind of like that. So when I talk about the non-lofting method of building these, you have some built-in fudge factor there, so you can sort of shape the boat as you build. Sounds complicated, but it's actually really forgiving. Over here, I got the garbards on this, and here we're using some 3/8 ply. So this whole boat is going to be 5/8 bottom, 3/8 planked side, planked sort of in our traditional manner, except it's going to be epoxy encapsulated plywood. And there was a comment on the last video about using epoxy and plywood for a boat. You might as well just give up the ghost. Well, if that were the case, then this place would not be here, because if the Lowells had never adapted to the times, material-wise, building style-wise, then this place would have ceased to exist 100 years ago. And in the 80s, they started using plywood bottoms and plywood garbards with glass on them. So that technology, or at least that tradition here, is already 45 years old. So in this case, I'm just carrying that forward a little bit. And in my time here, I've innovated, but I haven't given up the traditional style. So I could just make one plywood panel and wrap it around this boat, but that would not be the way that it would look good, nor the way it should be done. So I'm still building traditional methods, traditional style. The materials are different, that's all. So what I did use on here, again, we're trying something new. When I put the garbard on, I use some of this stuff. Total Boat Fixo. So Total Boat sent us some stuff to play with. And this guy here, thickened epoxy adhesive. So when you get two different chambers in here, when you squeeze them, they go through this little tip, which mixes them together. By the time it gets here, you get a perfectly mixed bit of epoxy. So one of the real pains when you're trying to epoxy a plank onto a bottom like this is trying to butter up, as I would call it, the edge of the bottom to get the plank on. This was actually really nice to be able to just squirt a nice bead of it right along and stick it on. And it says fast cure, but I think that's fast cure in a normal situation or normal circumstances. The shop is anything but normal circumstances as far as heat is concerned. So it just took a little bit longer to kick, but it did a nice job. I did run out of the tube about 4 feet shy of the stem, so I had to mix some of this stuff in there. Again, they sent us this too with these handy dispensers because our normal epoxy would be West System, and this ratio doesn't work with our West System dispenser, but these work great. And same here, we got a medium hardener. So in this shop, the shop being largely unheated, in the winter I will use fast hardener. In the summer I'll use slow hardener. And in the winter, the fast hardener takes a day and a half to kick. This took this about 2 days until I could sand it, with the temperature being probably 40 to 45. Oh, that's generous, maybe 45 to 50 in here. So anyway, worked fine, worked great. And so I'm gonna use this exclusively all the way up on this boat and see where it gets us. This is a little lifeguard dory we got going. Just getting frames together for this, and then we'll stick this together. And then this beetle cap, the apprentices have again begun working, which is great. Good crop this year. And we got the bottom all puttied up and sorted out and painted. A couple of coats of bottom paint, and we got our top sides pretty well faired up and primed. Now we turned it right side up, and we're looking at the next thing to do. One of the issues that we ran into, a couple of the issues, one of them was the bedding of this centerboard trunk. And so the idea, the hope, was to take the trunk out and bed underneath where the trunk meets the keel and then set it back down. However, geometry got in the way. The forward register, which are these posts here, is vertical. The deck got in the way too. We should mention that. The after one is at an angle like such, and so you couldn't just drop the case out because the case is bigger on the outside than the inside. So it's built in place. It's not meant to come apart. So what we ended up doing was prying the case. It's only put in with some ring nails through oak into the softwood pine of the centerboard trunk. So several swelling cycles, and those have kind of given up their hold. So what we did was pry it apart as much as we could. Got some bedding compound, some Sikaflex in there, and then got these clamps in there, stuck it together, tried to squeeze it together. We'll do that all around until we get a good seal on it, and that'll hold it pretty well. The other thing that we had happen here is that these deck planks, again, this is covered with canvas. This is really just a structure over which to lay the canvas. But these had all cupped like this. And so you had concavity in the middle and then a ridge where they came together. So if you ran your hand across, you'd be Humpty Dumpty. And if we were to just lay canvas over that, you'd see these deck lines. It wouldn't lay flat. So the kids have been planing the edges down to try to ferret across the curve of the deck here, so that when we do lay canvas on it, it lays nice and fair and flat. And gonna have to do that, not this week, but soon. That is not something that I've ever done. I've seen it done. In the wooden boat school with canvas canoes. It looks like something fun and interesting, but here you have a bit of an oddity in that your deck curves this way and that way. So I was thinking about instead of even doing this kind of situation where you plane the edges down, maybe getting a real thin sheet of plywood, putting it over the top, and then putting the canvas over that. However, I don't think the plywood would bend in both directions. You know, it's sort of like take a piece of paper, bend it like this, and then try to bend it like that, and it folds in the middle. It won't bend in both directions, and that's just a thin sheet of paper, never mind a piece of plywood. So tortured plywood only goes so far. Yeah, so that's what's going on here with this. Our other apprentices, younger folks, have been hauling boats out, getting them washed up, doing some painting. We've been blessed with, if you want to call it that, some decent, warm, dry weather. So I would say the fall is really dragging on here, and winter still seems a ways off. So we're taking advantage of that and trying to get the boats ready for next season now while we have the window. Invariably, if you're new to boating and you say, oh, I'll paint that in the spring before it goes in the water, well, April and May and early June tend to be a little wet and a little unfavorable for painting. So if you can get it done now in the favorable weather, my advice as a senior member of this community now is to get it done in the fall. So, and that, I believe, as I look around, is probably about it. Ooh, we should put HOA sponsors on the video.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Now I gotcha. Now I gotcha. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Nope.
Oh my God. Hello. Hi, buddy. What are you doing?
Hmm?